démarrer. 18h15, c'était l'heure qu'on avait prévue. Merci à tous d'être présents. Je pense que d'autres vont nous rejoindre. On va démarrer par une petite introduction. Je voulais d'abord remercier Olli Kuivalainen d'être avec nous. C'est un des chercheurs qui travaille souvent avec la fabrique. Il est chercheur de Finlande. Il vient de la petite ville de Lappeenranta, qui est à 25 km de la frontière russe, donc plutôt à l'est de la Finlande. Et Olli me faisait remarquer qu'il était à mi-parcours mi-distance entre Helsinki et Saint-Pétersbourg, donc vraiment la partie frontalière de la Russie de la Finlande. Je me permets de faire l'introduction en français, bien que Olli fera son speech en anglais, parce qu'Olli comprend le français et il le parle un peu, mais bon, je pense qu'il préfère il est plus à l'aise en anglais pour faire son speech. En tout cas, il parle français et je vais faire quelques mots d'introduction parce que c'est un sujet assez important et qui me tient à cœur qu'on va aborder aujourd'hui. C'est le sujet de comment les pays peuvent apporter du soutien et de manière générale plus efficace, rendre leurs entreprises plus efficaces à l'international. C'est un sujet universel. On va voir à travers la présentation d'aujourd'hui que c'est un sujet qui existe dans les pays du Sud. Là, on aura l'exemple du Bangladesh, qui existe dans les pays du Nord. On aura l'exemple de la Finlande, aussi un peu du Royaume-Uni. On parlera aussi de la France, d'autres exemples. Donc, c'est un problème universel avec un champ de possibilités assez large. Les pays peuvent essayer de travailler, d'améliorer leur performance export en travaillant beaucoup sur l'environnement, les compétences en commerce international, les compétences en langue, la marque pays, la reconnaissance sociale dont bénéficient les exportateurs, la coopération, le degré de capacité de création de coopération, de réseau qu'un pays peut déployer en son sein ou dans le monde. Ce sont des choses très immatérielles, mais qui peuvent compter. Après, des choses plus matérielles comme le financement, les services, l'information, des services qui peuvent être apportés ensuite par des acteurs publics, des acteurs régionaux, des acteurs associatifs, des acteurs privés, d'autres instituts. Et donc, en fait, en vérité, il y a un très grand champ du possible, sachant que l'ensemble des pays consacrent en général des budgets ou des ressources qui sont par définition finies. Je crois qu'en France, c'est à peu près 500 millions l'effort public au total pour la promotion du commerce international. Au Royaume-Uni, je crois que c'est un peu plus. En Allemagne, c'est peut-être un peu moins, mais on est toujours dans ces mêmes eaux. Et donc, la grande question, c'est qu'est-ce qu'on fait avec cet argent et comment on optimise au mieux cet argent et l'énergie qu'il y a autour de cet argent. Ce n'est pas qu'une question d'argent, c'est aussi une question beaucoup de discours, de verbes et de mobilisation. Voilà, alors c'est ça le thème un peu que va explorer Olli avec nous ce soir. Je vais lui laisser la parole. Donc, lui, il est chercheur et professeur en marketing international et en entrepreneuriat à l'université technique de l'université de technologie de Lappeenranta. Et je vais lui laisser donc exposer ses recherches sur ce sujet. On va faire une présentation qui va durer 30-40 minutes maximum et on aura ensuite toute une série de questions, d'échanges sur ces sujets. Ici, on est à la fois des académiques, à la fois des consultants, à la fois des exportateurs et des représentants des acteurs publics de l'accompagnement, des acteurs associatifs de l'accompagnement. Voilà. Donc, welcome, Olli. Very, very happy to welcome you here. Sorry for the French introduction, but
Merci, je comprends. Yeah.
Okay, that's great. That's fantastic. But anyway, now we go on in English, and the floor is yours. 30 to 40 minutes, and then we'll go on with the question time. Let's just start with your presentation. Thank you.
Merci, bonjour à tous. Welcome everybody to the presentation. So my topic, as discussed in French already, is export assistance, export promotion. And I had a paper with some co-authors last year, and I think it was Jean-Christophe who then picked up whether this topic would fit to the Fabric this time. So last time I was talking in 2018 about the decision-making and internationalization. So this time we talk export assistance. And I will give you a brief introduction to the themes, what is export promotion, export assistance, and as Etienne already said, that this is something that most of the governments do, most of the countries do, and some countries put more effort. We have a stronger institutional regimes where probably the service portfolio is wider. There's more resources to put into this, but in most of the countries we do have bit similar type of service, at least on the paper, being provided. So. And clearly this is important. Most of the countries are looking for enterprises who grow, and growing internationally is a way to grow. And of course, countries are looking for companies recruiting more people, pay more taxes, and that's why we, of course, try to push the companies from each country to international markets, as well attract investment from abroad. So this is, of course, something that governments do as well, although my focus more export assistance today. But we do have these invest in France, invest in Finland, invest in UK type of service as well, because that will be other way to get companies growing and more companies paying taxes, which governments are interested in. And clearly the idea is to give service, provide external assistance, external networks to companies and managers, founders, entrepreneurs in those companies, and that would help them to become bigger, become international, grow in international markets. And what I will do, as I said, I give you some empirical evidence of Bangladesh and Finland. I talk in the broader terms what's been offered. So I have some slides from Team France as well, and as well from the UK, because I used to be working in the UK as well before. So some examples of what's happening there, just for the concrete purposes, but the empirical evidence does come from Finland and Bangladesh today. And we look at some, what's been offered, what's the user experience, so like a satisfaction towards the services, as well as the performance implications. What are the things which matter for performance? And Bangladesh's study is very recent, although we have 2 data collection rounds, actually taps into the entrepreneurial orientation being a driver of performance, for example. That's kind of what we have on the agenda. And just kind of as a background, says that there's actually quite a large body of literature looking at this. So different countries all the time, we have seen researchers looking at what's ongoing, what kind of service being offered, and I would say that especially in the government provided services, often because it's taxpayers' money in use, so there are often kind of evaluation taking place afterwards, that whether the companies did benefit, did enjoy, did find the services they used meaningful and useful for their goals and objectives. So we do have lots of evidence whether certain service in certain countries has been successful, or perception of that, whether it's been successful or not. And we do lots of studies kind of looking at what types of services are being offered. However, if you want to compare between the countries, that's a bit tricky, because even we have the similar type of service being offered, of course, the quality might be different. And it's a bit like you compare apples and bananas between the countries, and that's very, you can't say whether the certain service always lead to certain type of outcome. But limited empirical evidence, there is still to a certain extent to what is the firm level outcome, whether the firm has been satisfied, whether there's long-term consequences, whether support has been useful. That's one thing I would still like to point out. Second, there seems to be different categorization and classifications for different types of services. I sometimes use this, that there's motivational ones. So we try to kind of, make people realize that they could become international, they could export, look for customers from different countries. Then there's informational, which gives you how to do this, how to export, how to conduct international business otherwise, and there's what kind of markets are there, what kind of companies you could think as target customer segments, and they have operational needs, just that we need certain information about a certain country, or even we could organize export groups, like joint cooperation with different companies interested in certain countries. There might be trade missions, trade fairs, market research, very tailor-made for the company needs as well. And financial support is there for operationally as well. Most of the countries do have certain kind of export finance or export insurance, assurance services taking place. Maybe then the more kind of fine-grained and more difficult to assess is that what phases the services are being provided. So they may not be just like one type of service fit all to everybody, and that may be something that countries and governments struggled in the past. So you have the service, but how well it does fit to individual needs for the firm, and whether there's a manager and you have the background. Everybody has a certain experience, some less, some more, and whether there's kind of one size of fit all to service for the different type of managers and entrepreneurs as well. But you may have the different categorization on the different websites providing those services, different government services, and you may have this new to export, new to market, more to market. And I show you a few examples of the Finnish categorization, the British categorization today as well, just to give you examples about this. But clearly we have a certain decision making taking place in the companies, and of course, first thing is a motivational thing, whether we think we want to grow internationally, whether we want to export, and there might be motivational problems, attitudinal problems, and this kind of know-how problem in the first place. So we don't know how to do it, and of course there might be services which might cater this type of need. And then the kind of after that, of course, it might be which export markets will we go, and there might be lack of market information. This is from late Jim Bell, 1997, but I like the figure. Jim Bell was my external examiner for my PhD, so I like using the figure from yesterday for this. But clearly, we had different problems, different stages of the internationalization already, and of course, this is about the more exporting decision. But after that, of course, there will be more question that what you do when you are in the market already. So if you want to grow, become a bigger entity in the market, you operate already. But there are entry barriers. We need to probably provide motivational training to a certain extent, but as well to provide knowledge and information. And when we are in the market, then there might be, of course, financial, logistical, operational problems. And then there might be service provided which focus on this domain as well. So that as a kind of introduction, what we are looking at. And if we move then to as an introduction, but if we look at then the examples of some of the services being provided. So this is example screenshot from the UK. And then you can see exporting, how to get to exporting. So rather initial phase service, what kind of service you can then have under that segment. And you can see in the UK of the UK Export Academy, learn to export. So step-by-step lessons, what you can do. Then you have the information about the right market choice, where to export. Then you have the kind of tools to do straight planning, make an export plan. And then you have, if you want to contact international trade advice, if you're interested in a certain country, and many countries have this with the embassy system or separate into as well, that you might have different trade promotion advisors located in different countries, for example. But you may have a export advice in the home country as well, certain network of assistant providers in different countries, and And then there's informational needs, and of course in the UK, assuming you have to be now much more careful about duties and customs procedures because of Brexit. And that's probably new for many companies because they were members for quite many decades as well. And then you may have some kind of specific country trade missions exporting to Australia. Of course, UK is very keen now. Markets opportunities beyond the European Union. At least I think Boris Johnson government is advising, but there's information about the different funding available and like practicalities, like how to do the logistics and all that kind of things. And that's probably very topical at the moment in the UK because of Brexit. But then you can see more like the life cycle services available, SMEs, startups, large companies. So depending on what type of company you are, they might be different segmentation of the services or different services being provided. Then you have the public sector research organisations and media there as well. And this is actually the Finnish example now. So Finnish Business Finland. Business Finland is actually a merger between the old Finnish International Business Service for companies, export assistance service, as well as the innovation service. So they thought innovation is often related to internationalization, and they merged these two a few years ago. But that one, the entity is called Business Finland. And if you look at the kind of SMEs page, then you can see that you can see that there's a life cycle for internationalization segmentation taking place. So you have here prepare and begin exporting, and then you have here for if you want to kind of strengthen your market position, develop your products. So there's innovation funding services there as well as funding to become bigger. Have more resources, and then you have here services looking for new markets, for example. So different type of segmentation for different type of companies, and they provide service for research organisations. Well, that's maybe something I think Finland has been good at. So they try to match research organisations to projects with the companies. In many cases, they've done that for years. And that's something that is encouraged. So there is kind of the fast growth for startups and global growth for those companies which are already international but look for growth beyond in its internationalization, and that's the kind of way Business Finland to segment their services at the moment. And here is an example from France, so Team France. And just a screen capture from them as well, and you can see they have as well. If you look at that agenda for export, more information for markets, and then opportunities for business, and bit similar type of idea that the companies come, and then you have certain service provided for certain type of need, but it would be like one-stop shop, but then you have the segmentation, the website guiding you what service might be relevant for your problems. And then just other screen capture, maybe the audience today is more familiar with the French system, but then this is something that there's a voluntary international enterprise, so the service which can try to look at the steps, what the company should do. They go further in the idea of becoming international. And I have here some list of the other services, and I've now so far shown you what the government assistance is like, but the reminder here, of course, that we have this kind of semi or quasi governmental organization as well, and then we have the industry associations, and then of course we have the private consultants, both in the home country and host country, to serving potential customers. And later, when I go to Bangladeshi data, the paper in International Marketing Review, some authors have done use kind of the categorization that you have more like this kind of course, public service and the private providers, but as well the Others are more based on exchange, but others more like a sponsorship based, that some you pay very little or you don't even pay sometimes when we talk about the governmental sense, or they might be subsidized. You get the funding from like Business Finland, and then you can use that funding to hire external consultants, for example, for certain type of service. With the certain trade, they have a certain price tag, which the private consultants agreed with the Finnish government trade organization. And this is an example screenshot from the big market research agency. So different companies, we do have the different type of providers and different price tags. So these companies, of course, are quite expensive. They often work with the large companies, but then we have more these man and a dog companies, which might have expertise about certain country, certain industry, and their price range might be more suitable for smaller enterprises as well. But that's kind of introduction of the what are the services in different countries, what kind of this kind of governmental service and private and semi-governmental services or quasi-government services you might find there. And now I go to actual empirical studies we have conducted. And the first example I had from Finland, and this is something we did for the we were paid to do research about how well Finnish software companies, software SMEs are being supported in Finland. And we did a survey about the Finnish software companies. Response rate was not perfect, so there's more qualitative study, but which may be interesting to you. We tried to look at the life cycle of company internationalization or firm internationalization, how well the service were kind of fitting the needs of the companies, being the different stages of the life cycle of the service. And this is a bit old, but Finnish systems evolved a bit after this. But you can notice that we were looking at both the generic services, both public and private, government services and private services, but then there was lots of services provided by regional players, by incubator centers, and some were very specific for the industry. And I'm not going to go through all these services, but you can see that they were something related to the digger internationalization, what is kind of early stage or latter stage, or like really international company looking for becoming a global company. But you see there was something on business development, and in Finland that's very much regional technology support centers providing services. So we have the regional network. Certainly, of course, regions are competing against each other regarding investment. But then we have the certain specific tools for readiness for internationalization training. Then we have the more market business education, and even personal training that you get to training for certain needs. And then you have very specific services for software as well, because software cluster was something Finnish government was keen to develop a few years ago. And then we modeled when we did the study, we asked the companies to think about what stage or phase in internationalization life cycle they were, so how international they were, and then think about had they used service. If they were already very international, they could look from back and tell us that, whether you use certain service in a certain stage, were you happy about the service, and what do you think the services would be most useful at for that stage. So we were kind of looking at the what stage or phase you are in. Have you used any service before? What service did you use? Did you see them meaningful, and which ones you think are the most meaningful in that stage? And just a few warnings here. So Jim Bell did kind of study in a number of the countries for his own PhD about export assistance. And he did Finland, Norway, and Ireland, for example. And what I learned for our study was that many managers, when they respond to these questionnaires, if they have been successful, they don't remember that somebody's given advice for them. They are thinking, I'm good, I did myself. And Jim got the list from the companies who had used the government service, but many of them didn't remember to mention this in the survey, but they did remember to mention it when they had failed or they had a bad experience. But if they had been successful, they didn't mention that. And then Jim went to talk to these companies and then reminded them, oh, actually, yeah, you were right. We actually did use the service and this guy was very good. But sometimes when we study these things, we don't remember these service were used. So you have to be a bit careful about this. But we did have this kind of idea of whether they used a service and what was the impact for their performance. And we don't have to go through all this because I think we might discuss that later. We don't have limited time, but we can notice from here that in the early stage or pre-start, when they can embarking, thinking about whether they start into the operations start phase, there was need for, of course, information. Information legislation sometimes, what is requirements, and then there was need to competence development and kind of straight planning and how we clarify the goals and objectives and how we built the plan. So that was something was kind of the scenes of, impact here, and often they use external consultants here. And that was maybe something to flag for the government services, that maybe we're not that good here, but consultants, they'd use some maybe were subsidized from the government, but that was more like refining the goals and objectives and what our requirements, competence we need, and what we should do in the end. And then we look at the latter stage, the growth and consolidation here. Interesting, they used like a FinPro at the time before the merger of Business Finland, becoming Business Finland, Tekis and FinPro. Other was Innovation Funding Agency, other was the International Business Export Assistance Agency. International Business Export Agency was being used in the growth phase as well in the consolidation, but here in the latter stages, international consultants became very important. So often they recruit a consultant from the country they wanted to enter, and they were kind of seen effective to learn about the legislation, regulations, and remembering this is industry specific. We're talking the software firms, and then they were probably looking for very specific information about how to sell the software, what kind of things they have to provide to be successfully operate in the country. So less use of the government support organizations here. So it was more used in the early stage, less used in the latter stages. And this was maybe something that if we were looking at the Business Finland website now, they clearly have this distinction of something from the early stage and something for the more global stage as well. So they try to tap into the better for the different stages as well nowadays. And FinPro was the export assistance government owned at the time. Now it's Business Finland. They were useful to look at the market potential and competence expertise development. But we really needed something about the specific country that was more the specific consultant within that country, for example. So that's Finnish study. Before we move to Bangladeshi study, so all these major areas were actually covered, but early stage support was kind of seen more useful, more better covered, and there was maybe some mismatch between supply and demand, and that's something that I think has been changing in Finland as we look at the life cycle evolution taking place. So more targeted, more tailored programs, and more suited to different stages of the needs. And then when we look at the Bangladeshi case, Then this is quantitative study, and I don't know what you know about Bangladesh, but it's the second biggest producer of clothing and garment at the moment. So lots of the fast food, sorry, not fast food, fast fashion is produced in Bangladesh at the moment, and there are lots of textile industry exporting firms in Bangladesh, and that's probably something. It's the biggest industry there, exporting industry in the country, but of course there's some other firms from different industries as well. And this first author of the study is my former doctoral student Anisul Farouk, and I got involved to this, but I have not done the data collection in Bangladesh myself. So bearing that in mind, but there are a few kind of things probably if you look at this more developing country setting. So of course in European Union we talk about the countries who have developed over the years, but the institutional setting and regime is stronger than in emerging markets and developing countries. That might give you a certain insight what is the situation there. And here the study looks at the performance implications, export assistance, and the export entrepreneurship in the form of entrepreneurial orientation or international entrepreneurial orientation is being studied. So the idea would be that whether the assistance actually has a direct consequence for performance of the firms which have received the assistance, as well looking at whether actually the assistance would, the export assistance programs would actually, or promotion programs would lead to increase in international entrepreneurial orientation of the firm. And with international entrepreneurial orientation of the firm, I mean whether they are looking for international markets, exporting, whether they are innovative regarding the market as well, but as well what to export, and whether they are taking the risk, so international risk taking with the firm as well. And here, there's a kind of in its first study, there were two studies conducted, and the first study was comparing governmental export assistance and non-governmental export assistance, so private consultants versus what's provided by the government in Bangladesh. And the idea was to not just look at the direct relations, but look at as well this export entrepreneurs, international entrepreneur orientation, how that is kind of maybe mediating as increasing the performance benefits in the end, if the assistant helps the company to become more internationally entrepreneurially oriented company. And the second study look at this quasi-governmental service providers in Bangladesh as well, and then I've given examples. Maybe there's something that government does support, but it's kind of more independent. And in Bangladesh, this is very much maybe industry associations, and they might be, for example, industry association, garment and textile producers, for example, and they get supported by the state as well, and control some of the exporting activities conducted by the firms from Bangladesh. But they might be like export credit agencies, might be kind of semi-governmental operators, for example. Bit depends on the country, whether fully government or like quasi-governmental organizations. And this is a screenshot from one of this is the National Export Promotion Bureau. So Bangladesh does provide in a government export promotion assistance as well, and you can see here just the website as well. And then this is more like the quasi-governmental, like the garments with made in Bangladesh tag, and this is more like a industry association where you have a certain members in apparel manufacturing companies, and they serve them, in their export needs. Two studies conducted. The first one was 2011, and 705 companies did respond, and the other one was 2019. 198 companies did respond to that second study, and the models were rather similar in the both studies. So the replication, only difference is in the second study we make the distinction between this quasi and governmental export assistance, and the reason for that was that in the first study there was negative impact from governmental export assistance to international entrepreneur orientation. So in a way that there was a kind of the link, like the support provided to export performance, so they did things, but they are not becoming more international entrepreneur oriented, maybe even less, and what could explain that? And of course, I already said too that there can be apples and bananas we compare, and whether there's something in the quality or type of service provided by the Bangladeshi government providers was something we want to look in a more detailed manner, and they make the distinction between different type of public or governmental and public service being provided. Respondents were owners and managers of the exporting firms, and this is a bit technical, but I just briefly show you a few examples. So there was a positive direct effect in the first study to financial performance they perceived, and the product market performance, that they're kind of introducing new products for international markets, as well as opening up, serving by exporting new markets internationally as well. So there was a positive effect in a data set between governmental and quasi-governmental export promotion providers, export assistance providers, but then if you look at the mediating here, international entrepreneurial orientation, there was a non-significant, even negative effect from this public service to international entrepreneurial orientation of these firms. Whereas consultants had a positive effect on that one as well. And that was something that which we didn't expect. I also did some qualitative interviews, and then we had a hunch to think that there was something in this quasi-government export promotion providers services promotion programs which maybe was a bit dubious, and then what we got from the second study. So this is the second study. The direct effect from the receiving service money, the market performance was still positive and significant, but we can see the difference here. It's not in the figure form, but we actually found that the quasi-governmental export promotion programs had negative effect on international entrepreneurial orientation, and that lowered the total effect. T is the total effect, I is indirect effect, D is the direct effect. So we can see that it was a quasi-government export promotion programs which actually were not performing as expected. Good maybe for the government, so the government service was at least at the decent level in the end. But the problem is with the quasi-governmental service, and I'm not the expert here, but there seems to be studies in other emerging countries as well that it may be that there are corrupted practices in certain providers which kind of make companies less happy regarding the service they were using, and that they was not pushing them to become more international. And that kind of course is a headache of a Bangladeshi government, hopefully, that they need to how to sort it out. But clearly, I think the key finding, which might be meaningful, is that of course more exotic country you operate in, the more corrupted practices there might be still taking place. And the question is that how to navigate if you're exporting to more exotic locations, so to speak. And like the government and private consultant service was leading to international orientation as well. And this I kind of already explained to you. So it was the quasi-national export promotion programs in Survey 2. We realized that was a kind of the negative significant effect on entrepreneurial orientation, which was kind of the problem. So good thing is that, you know, if we can see this motivational entrepreneurial behavior, you know, effect taking place, and but there might be the problem with the institutional incentives, corrupt practices, power politics in the countries like Bangladesh. But we did find some negative outcomes. Some other emerging countries in Asia, in studies other people have conducted in the past as well. Okay, implications. International orientation is influential fact achieving export performance. In the past, studies look at the market size, but I think this means it's kind of the orientation, motivational training to build up the orientation of the company at international business exporting is good, is meaningful, and it acted as a mediator between assistance provided and the actual financial and the market product performance. And clearly that when you think of the portfolio of the service being provided, how to get them to be risk takers, looking for new markets, being innovative, looking at the services and the products they want to serve the international market with. So that kind of is a positive thing from the study. But then how the governments would tackle in these emerging countries the opportunistic behavior and practice with the industry. And this is, of course, what stems from the Bangladeshi study, what we conducted. Okay, conclusions. I think one important thing is that we kind of think the fit between the firm's needs and skills was the resources and what's been provided. We have to look at the quality and relevance as well, and who are the ones using the service, whether we should provide the service for everybody. I recall a Swedish study in the past. I talked to the guy who was conducting study of export assistance in Sweden, and he found that it was only a small segment of companies which was using the services and knew about the services, and how we select the companies who get the money, get the service. So whether we kind of look at the companies who had the best chance to make it big in international markets, or whether we provide, like in the regional setting, service for everybody who come to us. So who do we serve? Who should we serve? Is the service right for segments which are meaningful, and whether the service we provide is of good quality and actually makes, you know, companies to be internationally oriented, and not just to maybe do some kind of performance consequence, whether they are going for long term for exporting and international business. And just to kind of say, in Finland, I've been following this from the bit from outside, but sometimes talking to Business Finland as well, and they clearly have kind of tried to mold the services to maybe to similar extent to what Team France is doing, or no expert on Team France, but that they actually combine this innovation service to foreign trade, exporting international assistance service, so that they will be single organization giving both services, even though there's still this kind of regional centers for economic development, transport and the environment, which kind of can provide at the regional level, but they can guide you to this one-stop shop service. Now, Team Finland, since 2019, they built this Team Finland network with the idea that you should have a more one-stop, one single provider, even though there are several providers, but they have the kind of the one portal for the companies looking for a service, and the service does contain as well the financing for starting growth international enterprises, and this kind of assurances against the risk arising from exports as well. And that's just a kind of example how they do. So they have the network because you have the different governmental services there, but anyway, they tried out the single portal where you would find information, and I hope it's working better than the previous organization they had. But that's the introduction, and if you have any comments, experience, advice you want to give, floor is yours. Merci. Thanks, Kiitos. That's the Finnish word.